Biograph Theater, Chicago, July 22nd, 1934, 10:31 p.m. John Dillinger walked out of the theater into the warm summer night, feeling good. The movie had been entertaining. Clark Gable playing a gangster, lots of action, a solid ending. Polly was on his left arm, Anna on his right. Two beautiful women. A perfect evening. He'd been in Chicago for 3 weeks, hiding in plain sight. The FBI thought he was in Wisconsin or Minnesota. They had no idea he was walking around Lincoln Avenue, going to movies, eating at restaurants, living like a normal person. He'd gotten minor plastic surgery, his face slightly altered, his fingerprints burned with acid. Not perfect, but enough to avoid casual recognition. He felt almost safe, almost normal. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, John noticed a man across the street. Middle-aged, suit, smoking a cigar. The man made eye contact with John, then suddenly dropped the cigar and reached into his jacket. John's instincts, honed by 14 months of running, hiding, shooting, screamed danger. He looked left. 3 men in suits moving toward him. He looked right. 4 more men, hands inside their jackets. He looked behind. 2 men blocking the theater entrance. And he realized, in that crystalline moment of understanding that comes too late, Anna had sold him out. The woman in the red dress, the woman he'd trusted, the woman whose boarding house had been his sanctuary, had led him into an FBI trap. John reached for the Colt .302 automatic in his right front pocket. He never cleared leather. 3 FBI agents opened fire simultaneously, and John Dillinger, the man who'd robbed over a dozen banks, who'd escaped from jail twice, who'd made J. Edgar Hoover look like a fool, who'd been America's most wanted criminal for over a year, died on a Chicago sidewalk at 10:32 p.m., killed not in a shootout, but in an ambush, betrayed by someone he'd trusted. And the FBI would call it their greatest triumph. But Dillinger's legend would live forever. But to understand how America's most famous bank robber ended up betrayed outside a Chicago movie theater, we need to go back 18 months, to January 1933, when a young man from Indiana decided that robbing banks was easier than working for a living. John Dillinger, from farm boy to public enemy. John Herbert Dillinger was born June 22, 1903, in Indianapolis, Indiana. His childhood was unremarkable. Middle-class family, decent education. No obvious signs he'd become America's most wanted criminal. But young John was restless, rebellious, bored by conventional life. At 16, he stole a car. At 20, he enlisted in the Navy, then deserted after just 5 months. At 21, he attempted to rob a grocery store with a friend, his first serious crime. He was caught, convicted, and sentenced to 10 to 20 years in Indiana State Prison. His accomplice, who had a better lawyer, got only 2 years. This perceived injustice embittered Dillinger. He spent 9 years in prison from 1924 to 1933, learning from experienced criminals, making connections, and planning his future career. Prison was his criminal education. When he was paroled on May 10, 1933, at age 30, John Dillinger walked out with a plan, a network of criminal contacts, and absolutely no intention of going straight. Within 4 months, he'd robbed his first bank. The Dillinger Gang, summer 1933. Dillinger's approach to bank robbery was professional, organized, and surprisingly non-violent. He studied banks carefully before hitting them. He planned escape routes meticulously. He preferred speed and intimidation over shooting. Get in, get the money, get out before police arrived. His gang typically consisted of 5 or 6 men, all experienced criminals he'd met in prison. They hit banks across the Midwest, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. In September 1933, they robbed the Massachusetts Avenue State Bank in Indianapolis, netting $21,000. In October, they hit the Central National Bank in Greencastle, Indiana, for $75,000. The robberies were daring, but usually bloodless. Dillinger would vault over the counter. He was athletic, energetic, almost theatrical in his movements. He'd crack jokes with bank employees, sometimes posing for photos that customers took. He cultivated a Robin Hood image, though he never actually gave money to the poor. The press loved him. During the Depression, when banks were foreclosing on people's homes and farms, a man who robbed banks became a folk hero to some Americans. Newspapers ran stories about Gentleman Johnny Dillinger, the bank robber who was polite to his victims. But the authorities weren't amused. In September 1933, Dillinger was arrested in Dayton, Ohio, and transferred to the jail in Lima, Ohio, to await trial. The arrest should have ended his criminal career. Instead, it began his legend. The Lima jailbreak, October 1933. On October 12, 1933, 3 members of Dillinger's gang, men he'd helped escape from Michigan, city prison before his own arrest, walked into the Lima jail posing as police officers from Indiana, there to transfer Dillinger. When Sheriff Jess Sarber asked to see their credentials, they shot him dead and broke Dillinger out. The murder of Sheriff Sarber transformed Dillinger from a celebrity bank robber into a cop killer in the public's eyes. The FBI, then called the Division of Investigation, took notice. J. Edgar Hoover, the Bureau's ambitious director, saw Dillinger as an opportunity to expand federal law enforcement power. Throughout late 1933 and early 1934, the Dillinger gang continued robbing banks while evading an increasingly intensive manhunt. They stole over $300,000, equivalent to roughly $7 million today. They also stole police weapons and bulletproof vests from police stations, arming themselves better than most law enforcement agencies. But the manhunt was intensifying. In January 1934, Dillinger was arrested again in Tucson, Arizona, and extradited to Indiana to face charges. He was placed in the Crown Point jail, which the local sheriff boasted was escape-proof. Dillinger escaped using a fake gun carved from wood. The Crown Point escape, March 1934. On March 3, 1934, Dillinger used a wooden gun, carved from a washboard and blackened with shoe polish to look real, to bluff his way out of Crown Point jail. He locked guards and other prisoners in cells, then stole the sheriff's personal car and drove to Illinois. The escape was humiliating for law enforcement. The press had a field day. A famous photograph showed Dillinger before the escape, posing with the Crown Point prosecutor and guards, his arm around the prosecutor's shoulder, everyone smiling. The prosecutor had boasted that Dillinger would never escape. Now the prosecutor looked like a fool. But the escape gave the FBI new jurisdiction. By stealing a car and driving it across state lines, Dillinger had violated the National Motor Vehicle Theft Act, a federal crime. Now J. Edgar Hoover could unleash the full resources of the federal government against Dillinger. Hoover declared Dillinger public enemy number 1 and assigned Special Agent Melvin Purvis to lead the manhunt. The Little Bohemia Lodge disaster, April 1934. The FBI got their first major lead in April 1934, when they learned Dillinger and his gang were hiding at Little Bohemia Lodge, a remote resort in northern Wisconsin owned by Emil Wanatka. Wanatka's wife had managed to slip a note to a relative warning that dangerous criminals were at the lodge and that relative contacted authorities. On April 22, 1934, Purvis led a team of agents to raid the lodge. They drove from Chicago in multiple cars, arriving after dark, attempting a surprise assault on what they believed was a heavily armed gang of killers. But everything went wrong from the start. As the agents approached through the woods, guard dogs at the lodge began barking furiously, alerting everyone inside that something was wrong. The agents, nervous and inexperienced in this kind of raid, advanced anyway. Just as they reached the lodge, 3 men came out the front door, got into a car, and started driving away. The agents, assuming these were Dillinger and his men attempting to escape, opened fire with Thompson submachine guns and rifles. They fired over 50 rounds, riddling the car with bullets. One man, Eugene Boisonneau, was killed instantly. The other two were seriously wounded. But these weren't criminals. They were local Civilian Conservation Corps workers who'd been drinking at the lodge's bar and were simply going home. The agents had just killed an innocent man and wounded 2 others in a case of catastrophic mistaken identity. Meanwhile, Dillinger and his gang, hearing the gunfire and seeing the muzzle flashes, immediately realized what was happening. They grabbed their weapons and money and escaped through the back windows of the lodge, running into the dark woods. The agents, realizing their mistake and hearing movement inside the lodge, attempted to storm the building, but by then it was too late. Dillinger was gone. 3 gang members were caught or killed in the following days, but Dillinger himself vanished. The Little Bohemia fiasco was a public relations nightmare for the FBI. Newspapers mocked Purvis and Hoover. Congress questioned whether the FBI was competent. Hoover was humiliated and furious. He told Purvis, "I want Dillinger. Dead or alive, I don't care. Just get him." The summer of 1934, hiding in plain sight. After Little Bohemia, Dillinger went underground. He underwent minor plastic surgery. His face was altered slightly. A mole was removed. His hairline was changed. He also used acid to burn off his fingerprints, a painful process that left his fingertips scarred, but made identification more difficult. In late June 1934, Dillinger arrived in Chicago and moved into a boarding house run by Anna Sage at 2420 North Halsted Street. Anna was a Romanian, immigrant in her 40s, who ran what authorities called a disorderly house, meaning some of her female tenants were prostitutes. One of those women was Polly Hamilton, a young waitress who became Dillinger's girlfriend. Dillinger, using the alias Jimmy Lawrence, lived quietly for several weeks. He went to movies, baseball games, restaurants. He kept his head down, avoided trouble, and tried to plan his next move. He was considering leaving the country, maybe going to Mexico or South America, somewhere the FBI couldn't reach him. But he needed money for that, and he was getting restless. Meanwhile, Anna Sage had a serious problem. The U.S. government was trying to deport her. Immigration officials had declared her an undesirable alien because of the prostitution at her boarding house. She faced deportation back to Romania, where she'd be penniless and stigmatized. Then Anna realized something. Her tenant's boyfriend was John Dillinger, and the FBI was offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. The Betrayal, July 21st, 1934. On July 21st, 1934, Anna Sage contacted a police officer she knew and told him she could deliver John Dillinger. The officer immediately contacted the FBI. That afternoon, Anna Sage met with Special Agent Melvin Purvis in the FBI office. She laid out her offer. She'd tell them where Dillinger would be, she'd identify him, she'd help them catch him. In exchange, she wanted 2 things: the $10,000 reward and help fighting her deportation. Purvis, desperate to redeem himself after Little Bohemia, agreed immediately. He promised the FBI would do everything possible to stop her deportation. He promised the reward money. All she had to do was set up Dillinger. Anna told Purvis that Dillinger wanted to go to the movies the next night, either the Biograph Theater or the Marlboro Theater. He hadn't decided which. She'd be with him, along with Polly Hamilton. Purvis asked how they'd identify him in the dark. Anna said she'd wear something distinctive, an orange dress that would glow red under the theater lights. The next day, July 22nd, Purvis deployed agents to both theaters. He positioned himself across the street from the Biograph Theater with 5 agents. Other teams covered exits, side streets, and the Marlboro Theater. By 8:30 p.m., over 20 FBI agents were in position. All they needed was confirmation that Dillinger was there. The signal, 8:35 p.m. At 8:35 p.m., Purvis saw them. 2 women and a man approaching the Biograph Theater. One woman wore a bright orange skirt. It was Anna Sage. Purvis lit a cigar, the prearranged signal to his men that the target was confirmed. The 3 people bought tickets and entered the theater. Purvis radioed the other teams. Dillinger is at the Biograph, Manhattan Melodrama, starring Clark Gable. Film ends at approximately 10:30 p.m. All units converge on this location. We take him when he exits. For the next 2 hours, 22 FBI agents waited in the summer heat, watching the theater entrance, preparing for what they expected to be a shootout. Dillinger was known to carry a Colt .380 automatic. He'd never been taken alive. The agents assumed he'd fight. Some hoped he would. J. Edgar Hoover had made it clear, dead or alive, just get him. The final exit, 10:30 p.m. At 10:30 p.m., the movie ended. The theater's doors opened. People began streaming out. Over 2,000 people who'd attended the late show on a warm summer Sunday night. Families and couples filing onto the sidewalk, discussing the film they'd just watched, deciding whether to get ice cream or just head home, completely unaware that they were about to witness history. Purvis scanned the crowd anxiously, heart pounding. Where was Dillinger? The orange dress. Where was the orange dress? For a terrible moment, he thought perhaps Dillinger had spotted the agents and slipped out a side exit. Then he saw them. Anna in her orange dress that glowed almost crimson under the theater's marquee lights, Polly beside her looking young and innocent, and between them, a man in a straw boater hat and wire-rimmed glasses, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed and happy. John Dillinger, America's public enemy #1, walking out of a movie theater like a normal person. Purvis moved forward, hand raised to signal his men, other agents closing in from multiple directions, from across the street, from parked cars, from the alley beside the theater. They were boxing him in, cutting off every escape route. The plan was to get close, surround him, then command him to surrender. But as Dillinger stepped onto the sidewalk and turned north toward where he'd parked his car, he glanced casually across the street, just a normal glance, the kind anyone might make, and saw Purvis. For just a moment, perhaps half a second, their eyes met across Lincoln Avenue. And Dillinger's entire demeanor changed. The relaxed smile vanished. His body tensed. His right hand moved toward his pocket, toward the Colt .80 automatic pistol he always carried. 3 agents, Charles Winstead, Clarence Hurt, and Herman Hollis, saw the motion. They'd been briefed. Dillinger will fight. He always fights. Don't give him the chance. They drew their weapons and fired. The gunshots were deafening, echoing off the buildings on both sides of Lincoln Avenue. People screamed. The crowd scattered in all directions, not understanding what was happening, just knowing that guns were firing. 5 shots total. 2 missed entirely. 1 grazed Dillinger's left side, tearing through his shirt. 1 struck his left forearm, shattering bone. The 5th bullet, fired by Agent Charles Winstead from less than 20 feet away, entered the back of Dillinger's neck, severed his spinal cord at the base of his skull, and exited just below his right eye. John Dillinger's legs gave out instantly. He fell forward, his straw boater hat flying off, his wire-rimmed glasses falling from his face, his body hitting the pavement face first with a sickening thump. He was dead before he finished falling. The Colt .30 was still in his pocket. He'd never drawn it. The aftermath, a sidewalk in Chicago. Chaos erupted. Civilians screamed and scattered. Police whistles blew. More agents converged on the scene. Anna Sage and Polly Hamilton were escorted away. Anna would later claim she didn't know the FBI planned to kill him, that she thought they'd arrest him. Within minutes, a crowd gathered. Word spread instantly. They got Dillinger. People rushed to the Biograph Theater. Some dipped handkerchiefs in the blood on the sidewalk, taking macabre souvenirs. Women fainted. Men cheered. By midnight, thousands of people crowded Lincoln Avenue, trying to see where public enemy number 1 had fallen. Dillinger's body was taken to the Cook County morgue. The next day, over 15,000 people filed past to view it, treating the morgue like a tourist attraction, the dead outlaw as a spectacle. The FBI conducted an autopsy that confirmed Dillinger's identity through scars, dental records, and other physical markers, despite the plastic surgery. His fingerprints, though damaged by acid, were still identifiable. J. Edgar Hoover held a press conference celebrating the FBI's greatest triumph. He praised Melvin Purvis and his agents. He declared this a turning point in the war against crime. The press, which had mocked the FBI after Little Bohemia, now celebrated them as heroes. But there were questions. Why had they shot him in the back? Why hadn't they attempted to arrest him first? Purvis claimed Dillinger had reached for his gun, giving them no choice. The official story was that it was a justified shooting. A dangerous criminal reaching for a weapon, killed before he could fire. Most Americans accepted this. John Dillinger was buried in Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis on July 25, 1934. Over 5,000 people attended the funeral. His father requested that the grave be covered in concrete and reinforced with scrap iron. He feared people would try to dig up the body. The Lady in Red, a broken promise. Anna Sage received her reward money, though the exact amount is disputed. Some sources say she got only $5,000 instead of the promised $10,000. But the FBI's promise to help her avoid deportation? That was broken. Despite Purvis's assurances, the Department of Immigration proceeded with Anna Sage's deportation. On April 25, 1936, less than 2 years after she'd betrayed Dillinger, Anna Sage was deported to Romania. She lived there in poverty until her death in 1947. The FBI never helped her. Purvis had made a promise he couldn't keep, or perhaps never intended to keep. Anna Sage became the Lady in Red, one of history's most famous betrayers, the woman who sold out John Dillinger for money and a broken promise. The legacy. America's first celebrity criminal. John Dillinger's death didn't end his legend. It solidified it. He became a folk hero to some, a villain to others, but undeniably a cultural icon. Books, movies, and songs celebrated or condemned him. His story became the template for countless gangster narratives. Why did Dillinger capture America's imagination so completely? Partly timing. The Depression had destroyed millions of lives. Banks, the institutions foreclosing on homes and farms, were despised. A man who robbed banks became, to some, a symbol of resistance against a system that had failed ordinary people. Partly personality. Dillinger was young, handsome, charismatic. He smiled in photos. He joked with hostages. He had style. Partly the FBI's role. J. Edgar Hoover used Dillinger's death to build the FBI into a powerful mythologized agency. The G-men who got Dillinger became heroes in popular culture, subject of movies, radio shows, and eventually television series. But there's a darker truth. John Dillinger was a criminal. He robbed banks, institutions insured by the government, meaning taxpayers, covered the losses. His gang killed multiple police officers. His escape attempts resulted in deaths. He wasn't Robin Hood. He wasn't a revolutionary. He was a bank robber who got famous, then got dead. Still, his legend persists. The Biograph Theater still stands in Chicago, a historical landmark. The alley where he died, now called Dillinger's Alley, attracts tourists. People still debate whether the FBI was justified in shooting him, whether Anna Sage was a traitor or a desperate woman, whether Dillinger was a folk hero or just a criminal who got lucky until he didn't. What's certain is this. On July 22, 1934, John Dillinger walked into a movie theater to watch a film about gangsters and betrayal. And when he walked out, he lived the ending he'd just watched on screen. Betrayed by someone he trusted. Killed by the law he'd evaded for so long. Dead on a sidewalk at 31 years old. America's first celebrity criminal. Public enemy number one. The man who made the FBI famous by dying. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from organized crime history. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thank you for watching.